Frau Hauptmann Margareta Funsteinberg stared at the hamburger on her plate as if it were a personal insult. A graduate of Berlin's elite culinary academy and former manager of officers' dining halls across occupied France, she now faced what she considered the ultimate proof of American barbarism. Ground beef pressed into a crude patty and shoved between two pieces of soft bread. The afternoon sun poured through the wide windows of Camp Ruston, Louisiana, turning the air thick and bright. Around her, 40 German women, nurses, clerks, radio operators, sat at long tables, shifting uneasily before the foreign meal. These weren't ordinary prisoners. They were professionals, raised in a nation that held German cuisine as the peak of European refinement. Margaret lifted her chin. "Meine Damen," she declared in crisp German, her voice carrying the tone of command that once made junior officers snap to attention. "This, what you see before you, is what becomes of a country without culinary heritage. They feed civilized women as if we were laborers from a traveling fair." Her hand gestured sharply toward the plate. The patty, trapped between two halves of a pale bun, was topped with lettuce, tomato, onion, and some mysterious sauce that glistened unpleasantly. To her trained eye, it looked like something assembled by a kitchen novice, under duress. Beside her, Oberleutnant Helga Zimmermann, once a hospital administrator in Dresden, nodded gravely. "In Germany," she murmured, "this would be factory food. And even then, we would have made it with dignity." At the edge of the room, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell of the U.S. Army watched the scene with mild amusement. A tall woman in her 30s with a soldier's posture and calm eyes, Mitchell looked every inch the professional. "Ladies," she said slowly in careful English, "I understand this may seem different from what you're used to, but I hope you'll try it before judging. The hamburger has fed American families for generations." Margaret understood enough English to catch her meaning, though she pretended not to. She leaned toward the women at her table, Nurse Petra Vogel, radio operator Anneliese Weber, and clerk Greta Hoffman, and spoke loud enough for others to hear. "The Americans think, if they overfeed us, we will forget that we are prisoners. They do not understand that cultured women cannot be bribed with quantity over quality." A ripple of laughter spread among the tables, nervous yet grateful for someone to voice what they all felt. In the 3 weeks since arriving at Camp Rustin, Margaret had become their unofficial leader, the person who gave words to their quiet resentment and preserved a sense of superiority that captivity hadn't yet stripped away. As chatter rose around the mess hall, the women began comparing this strange food to the meals they remembered from home. Dense rye bread, sour Breton simmered to perfection, and the kind of Sunday dinners that now seemed impossibly far away. Margaret pushed the hamburger aside, dissecting the rest of the plate instead. Green beans cooked decently, potato salad too sweet for her taste, and corn on the cob, a baffling choice she privately associated with animal feed, not people. She ate with deliberate precision, posture straight as if dining at an officer's table rather than in captivity. Then she saw it. 3 tables over, young Anneliese Weber was taking a tentative bite of her hamburger. Instead of grimacing, the radio operator looked almost intrigued. Margaret's brow tightened. "Anneliese," she called sharply in German, her tone slicing through the hall. "Are you actually eating that?" Caught mid-chew, the younger woman swallowed quickly, cheeks pink. "It isn't as bad as it looks, Frau Hauptmann." "Different, yes, but the meat is fresh, well seasoned." "Fresh meat does not excuse crude technique," Margaret replied coolly. "A trained chef would never mutilate good beef into paste. It's primitive." Yet even as she spoke, the aroma drifting through the room betrayed her. The scent of seared beef mingled with smoke and pepper, the sweetness of the sauce, the warm yeast of the bun. It stirred something primal in her stomach. She forced herself to ignore it. Hunger, she reminded herself, was no excuse for bad taste. That night, lying in her narrow bunk, Margaret tried to dismiss the thought. Yet it clung to her, an irritation and an intrigue. The hamburger, she admitted privately, had been well cooked, its components fresh and balanced, It was, by any technical standard, competently made. And that disturbed her deeply. Because if Americans could cook well, what else might they understand that she had refused to see? The next morning dawned heavy with Louisiana heat. Margaret climbed from her bunk with the stiff-backed resolve of someone determined not to surrender, least of all to her own appetite. Around her, the barracks hummed with quiet conversation as 40 German women prepared for another day behind barbed wire, another morning under foreign command. Breakfast, as it turned out, was no reprieve. The Americans had served scrambled eggs, bacon, crisp and aromatic, and something they called hash browns, grated potatoes, fried golden. To Margaret, it looked like peasant food, but she noticed how several of the younger women were eating with open pleasure. Helga Zimmermann sat beside her, picking up a forkful of the fried potatoes. "You should try them," she murmured. "They're better than they look." Margaret's head snapped toward her friend. "You, Helga?" "After all your talk of maintaining standards." Helga smiled faintly. "I tasted the hamburger last night." Silence fell between them. "You... what?" "I tasted it," Helga repeated, her voice calm, steady. "And it was good. Different from our food, yes, but good." My grandfather used to say pride makes poor seasoning. Margaret's jaw tightened. "So now you sound like the Americans." "No," Helga said softly. "I sound like someone tired of pretending that stubbornness is strength." The word struck deeper than Margaret wanted to admit. For weeks she'd clung to the belief that refusing to adapt was a form of resistance, a small defiance against the victors. But watching her fellow prisoners, their laughter softening, their eyes less hollow as they learned to stomach American meals, she felt a creeping unease. Was her rigidity truly courage, or simply fear of change? That afternoon, Captain Elizabeth Morrison, the camp's commanding officer, gathered the women in a shaded courtyard. Her German was formal but serviceable, her manner that of a teacher rather than a warden. "Ladies," Morrison began, "I know many of you struggle with our food. In Germany, cooking emphasizes complexity, sauces, reductions, multiple steps. In America, especially here in the South, we value freshness, simplicity, and honest flavors. Neither is wrong. They are different philosophies of the same purpose: to feed people well." She turned toward a large chart pinned to an easel. "This country produces more beef per person than any other on earth. The hamburger isn't crude, it's practical. It allows good meat to be cooked evenly and enjoyed fresh. Your schnitzel does the same thing, only with a different method." Margaret felt her throat tighten. Morrison's explanation was logical, disarmingly so. For the first time she saw the hamburger not as a symbol of barbarism, but as a solution shaped by circumstance. Perhaps, she thought uneasily, simplicity was not the enemy of skill. After the session, Lieutenant Mitchell approached her. "Frau Hauptmann von Steinberg, I hear you once managed officers' dining halls." "For 3 years," Margaret replied, her English clipped but clear. "Then you understand kitchens, organization, timing, precision." Mitchell smiled slightly. "Would you care to observe ours tomorrow morning? Not to cook, just to see how we prepare the hamburgers." Margaret hesitated, weighing dignity against curiosity. "Very well," she said finally, "but I promise nothing." "Fair enough, ma'am," Mitchell replied, her smile patient. That night Margaret lay awake while the others whispered in the dark. To her surprise, the talk was not bitter. It was hopeful. "The hamburger with cheese tonight was excellent," Petra Vogel murmured. "I went back for seconds," said another voice. "Has anyone noticed we're all gaining weight?" Someone laughed quietly. Margaret touched her own waist, startled by the softness returning to it. She had arrived gaunt from months of rationing. Now, American food, this enemy food, was healing her body. She turned to the window, staring at the faint glow beyond the fence. The outdoor grill stood there, silent now, but she could still smell it. The ghost of grilled beef, the warmth of bread, the scent of something she had sworn to despise. Tomorrow, she would see the process for herself. And for the first time, she feared what she might discover. Not about the Americans, but about her own certainty. The kitchen at dawn proved to be a revelation. Margaret had expected chaos, but instead found meticulous order. Stainless steel gleamed. Prep stations were organized. Ovens and griddles were arranged for efficiency. Ingredients were rotated with care. It was a kitchen run by someone who understood not only cooking, but organization and discipline. "Welcome to my domain," Lieutenant Mitchell said, gesturing proudly. 3 meals a day for 320 people, all made fresh. Mitchell showed Margarete the beef, fresh chuck, perfectly proportioned fat to lean, and began grinding it by hand.